All right, I think we're live now. Yes,
It's
we are.
working.
Yes, finally. I feel like we've done something here. So, so ridiculous. Anyway, I wanted to welcome everybody. This is probably gonna be a series. We'll see. We'll see down the road. But Willie and I were having this discussion not that long ago. We've had it many times actually, but we always kind of go back to this. But it's about censorship that's found in both video games and in movies, and you see it in other forms of entertainment, but it's gotten to the point now where you're starting to make noticeable recognition of it. So you'll start to see it in, well, Willie, what was the thing that what did you bring to my attention? Like, it wasn't, we've done this for years. We've talked about the censorship thing. But
Right.
what was it? Because that's one thing that will trigger you into it, like completely losing your shit. So,
Well, I think the first thing that really stood out was because it's been going on for a while with different games setting out, um, but, I guess like following the rules and guidelines of one specific country, but using one um, global version, as they like to put it.
right.
Like for instance, like with the game I've played and it's fairly popular is Rainbow Six Siege, one of the Tom Clancy games, and it's highly competitive. There's a lot of money in it,
Hmm.
and they decided to start. They proposed it to start covering up things like skulls, limiting blood. If there was any, like, sometimes on a video game map, you'll see, blood on the walls or whatever, just as like added atmosphere, and they wanted to remove that, as well as anything sort of, uh, how do you say, sexual, I guess,
Yeah.
as sexual as a video game can get.
Hmm.
Anything that like brings that topic up, they want to shut it down. But the one thing that has really been kind of on everyone's minds, at least for in the video game industry, is the fact that they're no longer having swastikas in video games.
Well, I know
Now,
that they changed this recently, but they're still not putting him in. And you know why they're still not putting it in? It's because a bunch of SJWs are fucking triggered every time they see a swastika.
yeah,
They just lifted it, like, I think this year in Germany, where it's no longer an issue, right? But now,
that's bizarre.
yeah. Now they're, because it's under the context of historical significance. Hi, Prime Geek.
Right.
I saw him in the chat. That's the Prime Geek guy. Anyways, so, I mean, I don't know. They lifted it and then they came back and they're like, "Oh, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal." You know, as long as it's historically significant. But they're still leaving it in the video games where you have this like emblem and it's not even close to being a swastika whatsoever, but it could be alluded to one,
Right.
and they're just gonna leave it be because of the different censorship they have in different countries generally over quote hate symbols, whatever the hell that
Right.
is. Because in Saudi Arabia, a hate symbol could be a lady's ankle. So let's not get too critical, right?
Right.
Oh,
Yeah,
Prime Geek says they messed up Battlefield 5, so no Nazi Germany flag in that game.
yeah, don't even get me started on Battlefield 5. They had such a great series going. They had a game as great and as close to being historically accurate as it could possibly be, I suppose, would be, in Battlefield 1. And then they follow it up with Battlefield 5, and that was just kind of like a wet fart of a video game. It wasn't really. There's a lot of theories that it was rushed because they're putting out a new one next year for the next gen consoles, but they took out any sort of like, other than I guess kind of loosely followed uniforms and the Iron Cross there and accents and maybe video guns and vehicles. There was really nothing else that was like, hey, these guys are German. There was no flags. It was
Right,
just an Iron Cross, a
right.
black and white Iron Cross. It's like it's kind of like I Battlefield used to be the franchise that didn't give a shit, about people's feelings. It was just about, this is what it is and get over it.
It's
It's
kind
like
of
the
like,
same thing with Call of Duty.
oh,
they
shit.
used to like they were showing people getting tortured and murdered like they did not care, and now it's like,
Right.
oh well, Nazis didn't exist. It's just the Axis faction. Like, fuck off, dude.
Like, I think one of, oh, to me, the thing I noticed was in films. Like, that was what I noticed first.
Right.
Because we were, when I went to school or whatever, I did a lot of papers about, obviously you knew that, about socialism and, the fascist, the increasing, all the different wars that led into another war, into different forms of socialism that kind of expanded, and how they went into propaganda control and kind of like PR, basically. And they kind of go in there and clean up all these things, but at the same time, they're erasing history as they go. So I did a whole paper about that. I did it about the eugenics movement and all this other crap. But pushing all that stuff aside, just the impact of getting into the media, into entertainment, once you get into that, then you start to kind of change the way the population may see. It's kind of like during World War II, the different propaganda that they used. But what we're seeing now is outsider influences like China coming into the picture and saying,
Right.
oh, well, you can't have, and the regulations are absolute shit. I mean, it's very intense what they've done, but I went looking around because I had found a couple interesting things a while ago when I was doing um, research about what exactly is in their constitution and what is it, how is it set, how is it read, right? So
Mhm.
China's constitution um, gives the people there in China a right to express themselves. Okay, um, but it doesn't give them. This is a right. This isn't a freedom, which is a big difference. So between a right and a
Right.
freedom, there's a huge jump. So the Article 35 of their constitution reads, citizens of the People's Republic of China enjoy freedom of speech, of the press, of assembly, of association, of procession, and demonstration. Let's laugh together about Tiananmen Square. But anyway,
Right.
uh, so a different analysis, person who was doing analysis of it back in 98 was like, the first nebulous word is to consider what freedom means. So she says that what is significant about freedom is is that it's used instead of the is that freedom is used instead of the word right in China's constitution. Rights are more legally enforceable than freedoms, as freedom would probably be considered a type of right. Um, and they don't do that. China has a clear, distinction between that. Their speech is very sick. It's down to the T. That's how crazy these people are. Oh,
Right.
Prime Geek says that the only Iron Cross historically in World War II was on Luftwaffe, Waif.
Yeah, the Luftwaffe, the other Air Force.
hmm And it was what was it? Their medals, right? I mean, they gave them out
Yeah,
for World War
they gave
One
them
and Two.
for the high-ranking officers. Not even that high-ranking. Like they were special medals that officers could, and even general infantry could be awarded. It was
hmm
the really tight ones up at the top of their neck that you would see,
Right.
and on some of their medals.
Yeah.
But I mean, you saw a variant of the Iron Cross also on their tanks, mostly vehicles.
And their
But
well, yeah, their planes and stuff.
as far as their general uniforms, it was always the eagle and the swastika. Like there was
hmm
never, because I mean that was the entire thing in Germany, was the ruling political party is, the National Socialists.
hmm
So there's no reason to use an Iron Cross.
They're like, we have our own logo, guys. Um,
Yeah, that was mostly the Iron Cross is mostly kind of a throwback to
Red
the
Baron type
original.
days.
Yeah, like those, like the original fucking German war machine and the Empire and all that nonsense.
Yeah. So going back to this constitution for China, um, basically, it's the way that their wording is about what freedom of speech is and of their press and of an assembly is they have the right to have that expression, but that's not protected. It's not a right. So this is, for example, they have freedom of artistic creation, films, but it's not included as a protected right to have that ability. So it's up to their discretion, and that's the way their laws are written there. It's like very
It's
vague.
basically at your own risk.
Dude, it's up to their opinions because they have multitude of different departments that review films and video games that come through there, and we're gonna get into like what those games are and recent ones too. For I think it's a player, the was it Player Unknown Battleground thing, um,
Yeah.
that big scam of a shitstorm. But anyway, um, so this is Article 22 reads of the Constitution. The state promotes the development of literature and art, the press, broadcasting, and television undertakings, publishing and distribution services, libraries, museums, cultural centers, and other cultural undertakings that serve the people in socialism, and sponsors mass cultural activities. Um, what the author of this continues to go on to say, and I'll probably link a lot of this stuff at the end of all this nonsense. But anyway, she says it seems to bode well for the cooperation between the government and the art of cultural undertaking of filmmaking. State promotion of the activity is strictly conditional, so the escape valve for the government is the clause that serve the people in socialism. This phrase provides a catch-all excuse to censor or ban a film because of any content, style, or method the government finds objectionable. That can be deemed not in the service of the people in socialism. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, Prime Geek says, did you see what NBC dropped tonight? The Chinese camera 24/7 citizen surveillance that rates your life choices like a credit score for being able to get things. I knew about it for 2 years. Yes, I did hear about that a while ago, that
Yeah.
citizenship point system, but basically, because they were going after journalist Prime. And they were targeting independent journalists that were in China, and there was a few of these journalists that were working with like UK journalists and United States journalists, and I got to listen to very few of those interviews because there wasn't many to go around, and they were getting their phones shut off, their computer access shut down because of their credit rating, basically to the citizen thing before it was formally announced. But they focused the system primarily on the undesirables, such as journalists that were considered a threat to the party, but also going after Christians, I guess, Christian organizations and groups by shutting off phones. And then what they would do is, like if, for example, your neighbor and you are really good friends and you have a credit or whatever scoring system that's very significantly low and deemed, let's say you're an enemy of the state, that person cannot be friends with you because it will affect their score. So this journalist there was losing every single person that he had as a connection because of this credit rating system that was basically being rolled out silently at first, and then it just exploded out, as far as the news formally being announced. Prime Geek goes, that's socialism at its finest, technological gulags, gulags.
Yeah. The some Black Mirror shit they got going on over there.
Yeah, I mean, but they're really strict. I think that the I think that's the best summary to describe China's policies. Now, the problem is a lot of films here in the United States have been, I mean, aside from the fact that we have so many studios being opened up in China, DreamWorks is one of them. They have their own version over in China. There's a dozen others, including Disney and so on. Because, Satan always needs more branches. I don't know. So,
Right.
um, so the fact that it's expanded into China, I mean, it's starting to affect a lot of God, just a different. One good example with how China is directly affecting games is, I mean, obviously there's been official. This is article from the late part of April. Hi, proper Jeremy or Jenny, excuse me, Jenny. oh, oh, it's so cute. Hi, thank you very much. Um, this article that I have here is China's new video game rules officially ban blood, corpses, mahjong, and poker because of the gambling. And this is from April of this year. And
Basically, we ban all the things that make video games fun.
yeah, pretty
Nice
much.
one.
But yeah, they were saying in late December, the Chinese government ended a 9-month freeze on approving new video games after a major government reorganization shifted the approval process to the propaganda-focused State Administration of Press and Publication. We now have official details of the new restrictions and requirements for games, and it doesn't look good for Mortal Kombat 11. Well, that's always been a problem, even if it
I
was.
mean, that whole game needs to be thrown the fuck out. I mean, if you're gonna,
Japan's always just been like, fuck them.
maybe that's why they don't get along.
But yeah. So, I mean, because China has a population of 1.4 billion people, making a game available to the country can be an obvious boost to the developer's bottom line. Okay. Now this, oh my God, let me see if I can. There is this outstanding portion of one of these articles talking about China's censorship, and it was about the. Let's see if I could go ahead and share a screen without killing my life. Let's see if I can do this. Oh, I labeled it appropriately. Well, I'm proud of myself. Okay, let me see if I can find what I was the article specifically I pulled from. I think it is from. Yeah, it is from that. It is from that. Okay, hold on one second. I got that boomer technology. Okay, boom. All right, so this article, Tencent replaced PUBG in China with a game for peace as its title. Oh no. So the they changed the name of the actual game as a game of peace. Now the game is most of it's intact. They haven't made huge quote huge changes. That's what they claim.
Yeah,
Oh Lord, it gets so much better. Uh oh my gosh. I'll read from my notes because I laughed so hard. I was like, I have to remember to mention this. So Tencent was never able to get the Chinese government to greenlight PUBG, one of the biggest video games in the world, but one which the Chinese government deemed overly gory. The Korean Battle Royale game has been a huge hit, and its mobile version, developed by Tencent, is actually quite good. Still,
oh yeah, I heard about this.
Still, the communist Chinese government has been cracking down on games more than ever recently, and after over a year of trying, Tencent gave up. Or rather, the massive Chinese publisher simply replaced it with a copycat developed in house called Game for Peace. According to this Reuters report, the game is virtually identical to PUBG, but with a few key differences. Users on Tencent's giant gaming platform Weibo, I say Weibo, but that's wrong, Weibo, noticed that the PUBG was gone. But when they logged into Game of Peace, they discovered that all their content was still intact. The game was now more patriotic, and all blood and gore had been removed. Now, the best part of this article, let me add, I'm just going back up to the top because I laughed so hard I had to read it twice. Oh no. The funniest thing about this game is that this is a quote from the article. The funniest thing about this, other than the Orwellian game title, is that the blood and gore have been replaced entirely, and not just in a cartoony Fortnite way. You literally can't kill people in Game of Peace. When you shoot people, they don't bleed, and the dead get up and wave goodbye. Not
Oh dear.
Not kidding. Yeah, you heard that right, folks. In Game of Peace, a battle royale game about being the last player standing, when you shoot an enemy, they don't bleed and they don't die. They simply get back up and wave goodbye. And
Sounds like a
this
safe space.
this is a bizarre hellscape that we've created with good intentions. It's funny, no doubt about it, but also a little chilling. Just because censorship is taking place in China doesn't mean we shouldn't worry about it in the West. And that is a great point from that Forbes article, which is very rare, but a very good read. I'll make sure to add that in there. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean they've already. I mean they're pushing Ubisoft. They're pressuring Ubisoft, a French company,
Hmm.
to make changes to games that are uh, popular in the United States and elsewhere. Heavily popular in the United States, especially though, and they almost got away with it too.
If it wasn't for those meddling kids,
Exactly.
I just
They would,
it
yeah.
blows my mind. Like when I read that, I was like, "You have to be kidding me! You have to be kidding me!" So, Prime Geek says, "So the Chinese army is nothing to worry about. Geez, they're just play toy soldiers now." I don't know. Their motivation to like take over the world, I think, is dependent on breeding at this point.
Yeah, they I don't know, with China, I mean they what Ubisoft did, I love how pussy they were about it, that they said that the reason why they wanted to make those changes was because I think like primary shareholders in Asian countries, like the major powers in China, and I'm like, you mean power? There's one dickhead, like just one, just one. Stop trying to play yourself.
Hmm. And I think, you know, because of all the restrictions that China has, and obviously they're rehashing these games, what these major corporations are doing now, though, is not just China, but you have other countries. Like, for example, when I heard about, God help me, they're remaking, what is it, Cat on a Hot Tin Roof? Or no, excuse me, West Side Story, they're rebooting or remaking, and I think Spielberg's doing that. They were
Oh yeah.
they're debating whether or not they're going to let the characters smoke. It's like a big fucking deal. And the reason why is because the smoking banning is a continuous thing. I mean, you had the World Health Organization calling for it, a ban on smoking in films, and now there's a new law that's actually in Turkey that has people in film and TV industries worried. So this is an article from March 11th of this year. I'm about to share that screen again. I kind of pop back and forth. Anyway, here's the article. A new law in Turkey apparently aimed at emphasizing a more pious lifestyle is having a chilling effect on filmmakers and television producers. So, I mean, they're basically going after smoking. They're going after, any kind of, quote, inappropriate behavior or sexualized content, what you would expect. But I think that it's a growing danger to creative thought and having that ability to share different things across lines. And they're blurring out images of, let's say, certain products from other countries, or people smoking is a big one. Australia has the same kind of restrictions. Thanks very much, Proper Jenny. uh, Hopefully you get the name change back. You're still pretty. Thank you. Anyway, so you have this law in Turkey, and then on top of it, you have other countries like Australia, who is very, very much the same kind of thing. Not as Orwellian necessarily, because Turkey's gotten a little bit more aggressive with different censoring. Not China levels, but getting there very, very quick. So, China, this is another article here. It says, no smoking, no tattoos, no bikinis inside China's war to clean up the internet. God help us all. Anyway, the article kind of goes into just how much any kind of appropriation or something they could allude to negative feelings. I'm surprised at this point they're even having films, but I think that China recognizes the propaganda machine that films ensue. Otherwise, they wouldn't have much power. But it's a very extreme version of the control that they put into films, and that the thing that sucks the most is that we're permitting this behavior. One of the things that sticks out actually there, if I hopefully I didn't close that window. Did I do that? Here we go. I didn't. Bless me. Okay. So there's an article here. It says China's movie censors are also censoring American movies, and this is a great example right here. Actually, it is a more current one. I mean, there's tons, but that's just a good one that sticks out. Um, this part here says that means they could be digitally scrubbing out images that Chinese censors would find offensive in films, as it was in the case with Red Dawn remake, okay? Which is, we all know why. I mean, but in which a Chinese army was turned into a North Korean army to tiptoeing around the controversial political issues. There's probably a few reasons Marvel altered the Ancient One in Doctor Strange, okay, because the Ancient One was actually Tibetan, and they got rid of it. So suddenly it was just this ominous monk running around. No bikinis.
Yeah.
Holy crap! Bangkok going to get popular. uh, yeah, that's true. God, that's gonna be a lot of porn. I'm just saying. Japan is staying afloat probably because China is like smuggling in porn. Excuse me.
Their
So,
entire economy is based off of Japan's porn.
and if you notice in a lot of films too, what this is pointing out, this also goes hand in hand with Chinese funding affecting film's content. One of the first examples was in Roundhead Johnson's excellent Looper. Whoever wrote this should just sit down. Which took a detour to Shanghai for no clear reason. And American studios are tailoring films from the ground up to appeal more to audiences in China, often by including Chinese actors, which are sporadically peppered throughout the movies, and even those actors have to get permission of the state. And I think a lot of people don't understand, if you piss off the state, even like, was it? I heard a rumor about Chung Yong Fat, The reason why we didn't see him for a while is because he managed to piss off somebody in the government, so he was blacklisted essentially from some work for a very short period of time. Jackie Chan is 100% government, Chinese communist government owned. So that's why you'll see him saying how great communism is. He thinks it's wonderful and that
Right.
people should make their own decisions for themselves because he's under a government rule. If you notice somebody's like government, sounding tool for censorship, then you should probably take a step back. Any moment that somebody's calling for a censorship in any form, right? So anyway, but they go over several different films in here that they've messed with in some way, shape, or form. But it always goes back to Chinese, audiences that they're focusing on. But they have so many departments, man. It's not one department. It's a multitude of departments that are getting themselves involved in all this crap. So, I don't know. What do you think will happen? Let's just say for the sake of argument, what do you think is going to happen in the next, I don't know, 5 years? How do you think films and video games are going to look with, let's just say, the political crap that's going on? It's not just, our SJW westernized bubble world that we live in, but also outside of the country. What do you think we're going to be seeing as far as video games, and why are we stuck in a sense in video games, where it's kind of like the same shit over and over again with some shooters? I mean, I feel like they're all kind of, there's very few of them that differentiate, and the moment that they do, it's like harder to get something like that again.
I think honestly, the fact that they are so massive, not just obviously in manpower, but in industry, a lot of the world's economy runs through China,
Mhm.
and they have a lot of major exports, even though they themselves aren't, kind of the media kings that the United States are in the United Kingdom.
Mhm.
They still have a lot of influence throughout all types of media.
Mhm.
And the fact that we also have so many snowflakes in the United States and everyone's been pussified, it really doesn't help, you know?
If there's a word right now that describes just, I think that I think the hardest thing is that in the United States they're pushing for censorship. They're pushing for like this soft touch. We don't want gore. We don't want to see smoking. You know what? I have never gotten so many nasty comments. I'm a smoker, okay? I'm not proud of it, but I'm a smoker. I don't give a damn. And I'll go outside and have a cigarette. I'm far from the door, and I always get a comment from some little shit. Excuse my language. And well, not really. Don't excuse my language. I called him that in the face. But I'm out there
I don't
smoking.
give a fuck, and then you say shit, and oh,
Well,
excuse my language.
I know I've been cussing. Oh well. Yay. But I'll be out smoking, and some fool will start having a comment. Usually it's some young little millennial girl with her little group of friends thinking I'm not going to come at her, and I will. I'll tell her Polly Pocket ass to take it down the street. I'm trying to have a cigarette. I'm not here to hurt anybody. But the smoking is like as if I have the plague. Like I'm somehow going to kill their future unborn children that they're probably not going to have anyway. By just
And then I'll
having a
go
cigarette.
slam Jaeger bombs and act as if somehow that's helpful.
Well, it's different, Kiefer, because it's at Coachella.
Like, oh yeah, you're basically killing yourself, but in, 30 years from now, your liver's just gonna slip out your ass. Oh no, you don't. You weren't seen out drinking, I guess, so it's
Hmm.
different.
Right. But yeah, I mean, it's so bizarre. I'm like, it's smoking. I'm not killing anybody. If they have a
Right.
problem with me, that's their problem. But to get blatant, hate for it, which I was like, weird. I mean, you might get a dirty look back in the day. I'm like, well, first off, I'm tucked away from the door. I'm not standing in front of an entryway somewhere. I will be standing literally in the street at that point, having a smoke. And they act like they have to say something snarky, and I'm like, wow, is this the world we're in now? Where these little dainties are upset with me, you know? And
Yeah.
more often than not, the smokers I have met, and like that's where I meet a lot of people actually, is out there smoking. Or if I'll go out to have a cigarette, we have our little cliques. I'll tell you that right now. And they've said the same things to me as they've gotten shit for smoking, from younger people, as if it's like, the worst thing on the planet. But yet they go and drink like outside of their means. Like I don't drink alcohol, you know, myself. But if you do it, I don't care as long as you're not an alcoholic and like killing people. You know what I'm saying? Like just don't get in the
Right.
car. You want to? It's the same thing. You want to go and have a little herb, if you will. That's fine, man. I don't care as long as you're not driving around. You know.
The Lord put it in the earth as a healthy herb.
um, Prime Geek says that 19th century America, last great freedom era, beer, guns, and freedom.
Yep, fighting wars that we shouldn't be fighting. That's what I love.
we're, we're just so busy, between the South American stuff and all this other nonsense. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's just the smoking thing struck me very odd. But then it was like, language, and now they're going after like you can't say certain words or they won't monetize. Like the after I think the PewDiePie incident, that happened. What they've been
With the
using,
whole
yeah, when
killing Jews bullshit.
yeah, terrible, yeah. Um, hey, the holding up the signs and all that crap in the video he did, paying those guys, whatever. Um, that started a lot of the demonetization across the board, and that I think they were looking for that excuse. They were just. I'll be honest with you, they were looking for it because Google's trying to position themselves with China and all these other countries, and in order for them to do this, in order for their company to save cash, let's be honest, yes, they have their own segments shown up in these places, but they can get all of us on the same page of censorship. That's a whole lot less for them to manage, you know.
Right.
And I think YouTube is one of the last few bigger platforms, and even here it's censored left and right. I mean, I know people getting, claimed for stupid things that are not worthy of being claimed, but it is a form of censorship. So, example, if somebody has an opinion against, because now we're talking more westernized censorship in a way, you have people that are posting a video and let's say they play the audio of it, God forbid, of a trailer or music in the background that's faint in the back. I mean, we're talking faint in the background. They'll have their stuff not only demonetized but pulled, if not one or the other. So it's this repeated cycle of them targeting people. Oh, the big one was this that they've been targeting people that had anything to say against the stupid Captain Marvel crap, right? Because
Right.
they were doing damage control. That's all corporation crap, no surprises. But they were going after anybody who had that to say, and then you have all the SJW nonsense that kind of spews out of Twitter, where it's just like a plague. So they, gang up on people, kind of like group stock in a sense, and go after people that say something they don't like. Well, then they start to go after their, let's say their videos or their Twitter, and then they have them censored because they claim pick one. There's a million reasons they can go after someone. Stuff most of the time is pretty vague and unsubstantiated, but it's still this censoring. But the thing is, in the United States, is that these people are asking very small majority of the population who just happen to have big frickin' mouths are asking for censorship because of being uncomfortable. And the reality is the world is not a comfortable place, you know.
Hmm.
And when you have censorship done through government, I think that that's more dangerous than anything.
Yeah,
And
because at that point it's mandated.
absolutely, because then you don't know what you're walking into. I mean, you could be watching. Yeah, I've watched. Oh my God, so many shows where I feel like they could have taken it to a better level. But like Game of Thrones, for example, going over to China, yeah, that show is completely a mess of any kind of
Yeah.
form of any sense. Like censorship is just taking it and just obliterated it. I'm sure people are waving goodbye as we speak. Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So, I mean, that's the part that kind of blows my mind is how big this has gotten. It's not, you know, it's not something. In the beginning, everyone's kind of downplays China, but China has a major influence in Hollywood. I mean, they've gotten themselves heavily instilled in the Hollywood industry in LA and also in surrounding areas. Not just buying property and maybe investing in different companies, but actually doing larger purchases behind closed doors. So the Chinese influence is very significant, and that's dangerous. These individuals would not have the money unless they were cooperative with their government. and that should always be connected to the two, and that's dangerous as hell. So I'm not surprised that these films have started to promote, I would say, very filtered and very soft touched things to bring in their own values from their own country. So if we wanted to do a Red Dawn that was, let's say, China instead of the North Korean threat, we should be able
Yeah,
to do that. F China, okay? Because they're communist.
right.
And communism, like I still have my shirt, which you are not getting, but I still have my shirt,
Oh yeah,
and I wear it a lot. People don't get it. It just says communists have no class on it. It was Stalin. I think it's yeah.
Stalin, Lenin, and Marx, I think.
Yeah, and people don't get it, but that's okay. Um,
Much like the communists don't get class.
bingo.
Hey guys, welcome to the China podcast.
And we don't talk. Maybe it would be copyrighted though. Oh my god, we should do a China communist broadcast. It just the whole thing
Run.
is nothing but their music. Mm. But yeah, I think I look at that and I go, okay, but the thing about China that's also disturbing with the amount of influence that they have in the films and in any form of media is the fact that they're having this significant influential money orientated impact on the industry. And the question is, what is that going to do down the road? You know, where is that going to be taken? Because I foresee it totally going off the rails. And Germany has their restrictions, and yes, they're very strict, but they lighten up on certain ones, whereas the others they don't. And they have their own set of censorship problems. And the UK, by far, is a whole nother mess of censorship with their crap they passed recently. And, wait, what is your opinion about that? I already know, but I want to hear you go.
Sorry, one of my glorious siblings decided to talk over that almost that entire thing.
Oh, that's so nice. Yay.
Can you repeat that?
Where, what do you think of the UK and their censorship? Because we just talked about this, like, I don't know, as it was happening, as that article went in, and everyone's like, it'll be fine, it'll be great, it's alright, don't worry, the memes are safe. What do you think? You know?
I think their people talk a whole lot of shit for people that can't even spread some butter on their toast without getting arrested for holding a lethal weapon.
So
You know,
dumb.
and I
Oh,
mean,
no.
it's getting to the point where things like hate speech, like saying, "Hey, that person said this or that," like, yeah, it's not pleasant, but the world isn't a pleasant place. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? In the United States, yeah, unfortunately, you can say those things, but that's a part of having free speech, and people like to say that oh, that doesn't include it. I mean, are you dumb? I mean, the fact that you had, police escorting, KKK rallies, so there were, outbreaks of violence like that, right? That you could show someone a picture of that, and that would sum up quite a bit of American history right there. And that's not to say, all of America's racist, but they're protecting the values that our country was founded upon, which was, hey, if you don't like something, you can voice your opinion. Um, but the second thing is get physical. That's when the police come in, and that's when people start to go to prison and never get seen again.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Yeah,
I
yeah. I
mean,
mean, it's a slippery slope.
right. And I think over time, too, it's going to get worse. It's just a question of what exactly is, what's going to be that thing. I'm trying to pull up a damn meme because talented, so I don't think it's going to work. Um, that's okay. I get a cookie for trying on that. But
Yeah, I mean, from the sound of it, sounds like we're gonna try to invade China again, boys. Let's do it. Why not?
right.
I mean, the United States has never cared too much for communists, and it's only a matter of time. I think the only thing that's keeping us from doing that is the fact that they are one of the big stilts holding up our economy.
Mhm. Mhm.
So if they were to pull the rug out from underneath us, it would be a bad day for everybody involved.
It's true. And I think
And I'm not necessarily afraid of their military. It's just the fact that they have so many of them. It's like beating a bunch of like 10th graders. Like, yeah, sure, like there's a lot of them, but I mean they are pretty small, you know.
Mhm. I don't. And when I look at all the stuff that's going on, I think the self censorship thing absolutely pisses me off above anything. And there's always a justification for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Always. And oh well, someone got offended or upset. There you go. A little meme for everyone. It's my one with the
Yeah,
bald eagles.
there's there's I had a conversation, with my girlfriend about it, about how 'cause she tried to tell me jokes aren't funny if they're offensive, and I'm like, every single joke that has ever been told is offensive to somebody. That's why they're a joke. It's always at the expense of something or someone. So I mean, saying that it's not funny just because it's offensive is stupid. I think I was like making fun of midgets or something, and she was like gatekeeping midget jokes, I guess.
And that's the thing is we're getting overly zealous about very very simple things. You know that I'm not saying that like jokes can't be harmful, okay, in some ways.
Right.
I know there's some terrible jokes.
There's things that are, I mean, that phrase too far, I mean, does exist for a reason, but uh, it's just it's just like know your audience. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? Like if I don't go to work and make suicide jokes all the time, like I would with my buddies. If we're just messing around.
Right.
It's just know your surroundings. That's basically all you can do. And if
Mhm.
somebody happens to get offended, then okay, oh well. Like you're gonna have to suffer the consequences of having that person tell you about how their grandma died in Vietnam or some garbage.
I think it's like I was talking to I was talking to a group of people, and you know how I am. I open my mouth, and I'm like, oh well, that worked out well. Um,
Yeah.
I don't care, obviously, in the end. I mean, I felt bad at the time to like a couple of minutes. I felt bad, but then I was like, well, you know what? Fuck that girl anyway. Um, I just made a lighthearted joke, about because she has a child with autism. I do too. Okay, fine. And I said, well, internet autism is also on the spectrum. And I made that joke, right? And she got really pissed off. And I was like, listen, oh, Gloria, you don't need to be that upset. It isn't that much of like your life is ruined.
Yeah, it's not that big a deal.
No, because if I can't laugh at how hard things can get, and I feel terrible for my kid every day as it is, like there are no permanent fixes. You know what I mean? Everyone lies to you and tells
Right.
you a bunch of bullshit, and you can't have a joke. Then you should just give up now because you pretty much take this. I understand that you love your kid, but you being a bitch is not going to validate your kid. So like when
I mean,
I need to speak to
there's
your manager.
yeah, there's a lot of, autism jokes. I mean, especially around like 2016 or so.
Right.
That's when it was like just everywhere.
Mhm.
And
Well, hell, there still
I mean,
is.
I mean, I don't really bother getting offended at any of it. Like
Mm-mm.
it's just people being stupid. It's a joke. I understand that it is a joke.
Right.
I've made quite a few hurtful jokes, in my time. So I mean, I'm not really going to sit here and pretend that I'm a saint or that I'm, somehow, above them or that like, oh, I've never done that. How could you say something so horrible? Like I've said worse.
Right. Absolutely. And I think when we look at stuff, yeah, when we look at stuff though in this way where we're offended by things, we can't make jokes because we're afraid that it'll offend someone. We're self-censoring ourselves generally. Just I mean, there's days where I feel like I'm not gonna say anything. There's no good that will come from this conversation. You know what I mean? That moment where you're like, yep, I am
Right.
not gonna do this. It's not gonna be a good day. Hello, sir, Gregory. How are you? He's in Amsterdam where it is 1:50 a.m. Mother of God, what are you doing up, sir?
There's 150. This
1:50
is
a.m. That is very early. Well, thank you for being here, Gregory. But yeah, like, I don't know. I think that when people start to self censor and you can't even tell a joke, and humor sucks right now as far as mainstream humor. It's
yeah.
it's fucking terrible.
I mean, it feels like I'm going over to one of my religious friends' houses, and then they laughed at like a Modern Family joke on cable access, and it makes me honestly want to eat a barrel.
Oh, that's negative. That's just negative, sir.
They, I think like what I don't understand is how a generation raised on Family Guy and South Park managed to be so like butthurt about everything. Like really, like this was the humor that you understood growing up, and now
Hmm.
you're upset at that. I'm surprised there aren't more cynics, you know, that
Yeah,
everything is now is just like, oh, but that wasn't okay. It was really rude because someone in the world, dude, I don't care about little Matuba in Africa. I really don't. Because at the end of the day, I mean, what's going to happen is going to happen, you know? And it's just, I can't really walk on eggshells for someone that isn't even there,
right.
you know? Like, it doesn't make sense because you have all these gatekeepers everywhere that are like, I'll have you know, I donate 12 cents a day. Like, no one gives a shit.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't, because I mean, wasn't ever this way before, and I really, there was always people that were like, oh, that's not funny, like that was just people in general. But nowadays, it's every other person is like, oh, that's off topic, that's taboo. I'm like, really, really, that's taboo? Okay, it's just, I mean, I'd like to understand where it like started, where it
Hmm.
stemmed from,
What do you
you
mean,
know?
like all of this censorship here in the U.S.?
Yeah,
Oh, I
I
can
mean
tell you where
it's
it came from. I can tell you right. You're breathing crazy into the mic, man. But the I can tell you right now that it came from generations. Okay, this is a generational thing. I always go back to this because it is so true. This stuff is started like, oh, I would say, well, I think it started with coming out of the Xer generation, right? So their kids and the boomers' kids, because you have this huge generation of boomers, right? So my generation, I'm kind of tucked in between millennial and Xer. I'm not either. I don't feel that way. I went to school with millennials, but I definitely dealt more with Xers in different ways. But like when I started, like I worked full time at like 19, so I was dealing with a lot more of that crowd. But I was a latchkey kid and all this stuff, and so I had a lot of freedom. And like I had talked about this on a podcast the other day, I was very lucky as a kid where I could go and just go do stuff. I didn't have a parent who was stalking every move I made. You know what I'm saying? So there wasn't this repeated cycle of crazy town 24/7, if that makes sense. So I could go and have freedom. I had a lot of friends who couldn't even go out and ride their bike on a sidewalk in some cases because it was too close to the street. That's how psychotic their parents were. And these were both boomers and I would say older Xers that were preventing that behavior. Well, after being told, no, the world is scary and I have to protect you, and the things I grew up in a city, so I was accustomed to seeing all kinds of craziness. I had, when I was a kid coming home from school, I had to watch for vans that would follow you, cars that would follow you. Those were just regular day to day things. All of this is an SJW thing for sure, Gregory. So this stuff that it's all connected in the sense of this. You have a generation of sheltering, telling them that the world is scary and that racism exists around every corner. A lot of the people I knew growing up, I had conservative and liberal friends. And I noticed that there was racism in both. And there is still racism in both. And one is more quiet and tucked away, and the other is lied about and tucked away. And I don't believe that anyone walks away without guilt when it comes to political parties. I think they're both full of shit. political atheist. That's the way I think. But the liberals that would, I remember things being said, that were I knew it was racist. I was like, whoa, ow, I didn't expect that. But I dealt with it because I was like, I don't need to deal with that because I got mistaken for being, Hispanic or mixed, quote unquote, or other words, um, very often. So they would make very disgusting comments that were so entitled. Oh, you're so unique. What is she? Like as if I'm like some kind of specimen as a kid. Kids are very aware of these things, but a lot of my friends were very sheltered and they were told by their parents that the world was racist, period, and that everyone was racist and everyone was evil, and I wasn't raised that way. Um, so even though racism was hidden and tucked away, the ones that often were, in my opinion, who were racist are the ones that claim that racism was around every corner. That to me is racism. That's assuming any group is a certain way because of the color of their skin. It's very ignorant and dumbed down thinking, and it's actually very plateaued thinking. So now that we have this, these parents that have raised these kids not only sheltered and helicoptered, and everyone gets a trophy for winning, right? They Nobody wins from that in the end. So these kids grew up entitled, thinking that they were all going to change the world, because they are special little cupcakes, and they have no concept of how to live alone, like truly alone, without a roommate. I know very few people that have lived alone. No one I know has lived alone. They've always had a roommate or a best friend or a spouse, okay, that they've lived with, so they didn't know how to like live independently, or they lived at home because they didn't want to be alone, right? So this cycle has
Oh my
gotten
God, I've been
worse and
muted this whole
worse.
time.
Oh, well, I was wondering why you're quiet. Like, I can yap all day, dude. Um,
I mean, I was just listening though.
Gregory says he blames fast food and iPhones. That is probably the most true statement ever. The downfall
Oh,
of
you,
humanity was Apple. They had one good
I'll blame
computer.
it on Apple any day.
Yeah, Apple's the Antichrist. We figured it out. But yeah, I mean, you have this whole generation that's been just sheltered, and they don't understand what true racism is. They think it's just everything. And their parents didn't educate them about the world, or that there is a world outside the United States where, you don't go tracking through, I don't know, a Middle Eastern country as two white females and think it's going to go well when you're not covered. Or better yet, you're just
Right.
American or Swedish or whatever country that you're from. You hear about this more and more often about like these, well, I don't know, hipster type millennials, I guess, who, well, I have no problem with seeing the world, absolutely not. But you should always be aware of your surroundings and the cultures that you're walking into. And you can't be a dumbass thinking that the world is an Instagram picture. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're going to die, sir. You're going to die. But um, I think that this is why it's come to this point. I mean, now you have the parents still living, but they're on their way out of the industries that they've, had in their control for such a long time, because we're talking about a massive generation. So whether that's in films or movies or just in employment in businesses and corporations, I mean, the way that they're running some of these companies, which I'm not naming any because I don't want to get any of my friends in trouble that work for them, but if they have liberal policies, it's pretty intense. Like, it's nothing like the corporations I used to work for when I was younger. Um, Now it's like they have to hold your hand. They, feel like they have to babysit their employees. They have diversity training almost like every other month. There's always somebody getting canned for some form of, quote, sexual harassment, unquote, whatever you want to think that is. Um, in a lot of cases, it's not true, but because it's a liability and it's someone's word, against another, they have to document it heavily with enough witnesses who are willing to go on, the record of trying to get this person out the door, so they don't have to worry about the, quote, victim, okay? So a lot of
Right.
weird stuff goes on where people are getting canned left and right, but at the same time, it's always being labeled as a diversity issue or equality issue. And the companies, though, are like daycare centers. And a lot of the employees, I know from different, I have friends in different age groups and stuff, and they all struggle with it. Now, they play along and they think they understand, but they really don't. And I'm like, dude, this is just the way it is. I don't agree with it. I'm not going to go make some crazy joke, which I would love to. Um, but I'm aware that the environment is toxic. You know what I mean? Like, it's a toxic environment and it could hurt other people. And they don't, a lot of these kids have just never experienced the true world for what it is. They've always had someone holding their hand or patting their ass telling them how pretty they are instead of just being exposed to it. So the self-censorship is like an easy parenting, late life parenting tool so these kids can grow up. That's how I feel. I feel like they are putting, little elbow pads and helmets on everybody so nobody pokes anybody in the eye, you know, so that way the big bad world looks a little less scary. But when their parents, the job of any parent, and this if anything out of this podcast should be taken at direct quote, your job as a parent is to prepare your kid to live in a world when you are dead. That does not mean you give them elbow pads and helmets and tell them that they're always going to be a winner. No, you tell them to go and get a goddamn job and get out of the house and see the world for what it is, not what you think it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to really travel and see the world, but use common sense. Study or understand the culture. Don't just think you're being a badass and showing up, because that doesn't
Right.
work. You could go to the UK and say the most inappropriate thing or take a knife. Hey, you have a butter knife and you're walking around. I mean, you could get arrested,
Right.
because that's how ridiculous it is. And I think that the dangers of not understanding how the world works versus the United States, we live in a bubble in this country.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gregory says Americans need paid vacations. It depends on what your definition of a vacation is. Is that the gulag? Maybe. No one knows. No one knows.
I'd sure love a paid vacation.
I know. That's one thing that we don't have. I mean, we used to have, but Gregory's right on that. Is that we don't have that anymore either. We don't get paid vacations in the same way. Not like it used to be. Like I remember I could have like I got 2 weeks in a year, and that sounds like very little to some countries. I don't know what it's like. I don't know the guidelines in Amsterdam about how many weeks off do you get and things like that. But here,
He's like, it's always Modelo time down here.
but I think that that's why we're in this. In my opinion, this is why we're in the mess we're in. Is because we just have all these kids running around like fools. And the parents are, trying to tell them, well, smoking is bad and marijuana's fine because mommy takes it to help her sleep. If we don't
Right.
teach these kids about reality and that words are going to hurt and that the world should not be censored. It is not okay that we're having films and video games censored. Blood is blood. Bodies are dead. That's the way it is. And I'm not saying that we should have nonstop gore, but it's almost like the Democrats have kind of reverted back to what the right wingers used to do, where they would freak out about video games and say it was like the
Right.
devil's work. And that's why we have mass shootings is because
Yeah,
of
blaming school shootings on, GTA or some shit.
right. Okay, Gregory says 6 weeks and paid sick leave. Wow. Oh my God.
Damn.
Gregory, why? Why, Gregory? Why do you. Oh, it's so sad. Americans are morons. But then again, I don't know. We have some stuff, right? We have our freedom. But yeah, 6 weeks? That's like. It feels like maternity leave for some women. That's maternity
Yeah.
leave for some women. That's how sad that. I mean, I know some women get up to 3 months or 6 months, depending on the company, but 6 weeks is the average for maternity leave after having a baby here in the U.S., I believe. Oh, Greg. That's Gregory. What has happened? What?
Yeah.
Oh no.
My one of my best friends, he works for Coca-Cola in the warehouses,
Mm,
and he works around 50 up to 60 hours a week. And 40 is full time in the United States. Like once you hit 40, that's when it start. It's
mhm.
once you get into overtime.
Mhm.
But he works around like 10 to 20 hours of overtime a week. Um, and he gets, I think I want to say 3 weeks out of the year. He gets paid leave. Well, not
Wow.
leave, that's military, but
Well, he has time
vacation.
off, right?
But yeah, and he's out there busting hump like that's like a physical job, you know.
right?
And that's not just sitting around at a computer.
Like the one thing that really started, like this is, from experience. Like I remember I was contracted in a quote contract from temp to permanent position for a telecommunications company. Oh, screw it, I'll say it was AT&T, and I was working internal like tech support crap. And they promised me that I would be hired permanently within, I think they said, a year. So I hit my year and I don't get on permanently. Well, at that point, I mean, I was making good money, but not nearly as good. Well, come to find out, and I found out the hard way, they never intended to make us permanent. It took me another I think almost a year, 2 years. So 2 years at AT&T, and I found out we were not going to be hired permanently. We were only going to be temporary employees, which is absolutely the worst idea ever in the United States, ever. Because you don't get paid leave. You have, the company can request mandatory overtime. And I had no time off. I remember there was some times for a while there I was working 6 days a week and I only had one day off. And it was so bad. I was working 12-hour shifts every day because they were short staffed, and I was trying to get out of that job. The money was good, but it was killing me, and I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. It was just way too much going on at the time. So, I mean, that's a bad experience, but it's true. So when um, fast forward, I'm having a kid. Uh, like, I had no maternity leave whatsoever. We just had to take the hit. So, if I needed to be out of work for a month to 2 months. Hey there, Stig. How are you? Stig Kenobi in the house, giving out those Kenobi points. But, uh, I mean, it was insane. So, like, when you look at how we live in America versus other countries, it's insane. But then you're like, well, what else is different? And usually it's the legislation that makes those significant differences. I mean, there's some fantastic legislation to protect employees in other countries. In the United States, it's such a capitalistic system. You can lean left or lean right and say either one. Yeah, this isn't that bad, but it always goes back to it's gonna suck. Something's gonna suck. You're gonna pay for it in America. Period. So with this environment, though, where now we have this generation that needs to have mental health days. I don't.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, you've heard about that, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
calling because I need a mental health day. You know what? Your mother you should have been spanked. Okay, let's be honest. You should have been spanked. You know, like this is the problem. This is why you have these problems. Oh, Gregory says we should come live in the Netherlands.
I mean, fuck it.
He's gonna do it. Oh man, just send money after you get there, Willie. I'll follow you. It's cool.
I mean, butt
Oh,
is
happy
legal.
birthday, Stig. You just turned 40. Hey man, I'm like right behind you, Stig, actually, in November. So, feeling it. Not really. It's kind of weird. Kiefer, how old are you again?
Half his age.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Willie is 20. Just turned 20.
Yep, I'm a big boy now.
So, Stig, how does 40 feel? Is there any significant differences with 40? Like, is it a magical mystery tour? Do you feel like you've like grown more hair on your chest now, and you can take on something? I don't know what happens at 40. I've had friends with who had there are moments of a weird meltdown when they hit 40, and I was like, why? I don't get it, man.
Is 20 too early to have a midlife crisis? Because I really want to buy a Subaru.
You're killing me. Well, I mean, as long as you get a deal on it, you can go to one of those auto auctions that they have. Because
Right.
former the vehicles they repossess from drug cartels, if you will, or criminals, or some mafia even. You can get yourself a
Right.
nice car that's been repossessed or taken into custody. But soon enough, I don't know. But as far as with the ongoing censorship that's continued, I don't really have aside from it being a generational thing of why it's led up to all this, that they're so willing to accept. Like, I know assholes who are in support of like China's communism, and I'm like,
Yeah,
why? You know?
I love when people try to sit here in their ivory thrones and go, "Hey, those guys over there, they really know what they're doing. You need to let them do whatever they need to do." Like the people who enabled, not necessarily enabled, but cheered on
Mhm.
Castro and all of that bullshit. Like they look back on it fondly. Same thing with the Soviet Union, acting as if it was some wonderland and it was, a utopian society. Go fuck yourself. Really? Really?
Mhm.
Like we're here in our comfy little comas,
Mhm.
and we get to look fondly upon the past as if, we understand what it was like back then just because we read a book,
Right.
you know, or saw a movie. It's just a bunch of bullshit.
Stig piped up. He says he was hairy at 20, so no difference there. But he has an urge to sleep with a motorcycle. That sounds like that sounds like a.
That'll get you there.
Well, the question is, where's the tailpipe? That's all we want to know. Well, happy birthday, Stig. That's awesome. Well, at least there's more people in my crowd around. I'm like, ah, yes, November cometh soon. But I think when people defend the censorship stuff that comes out of these countries, especially in the UK, that there's so much stuff involved in how they're approaching when somebody says a comment online. As an example, this is another. I see social media as nothing more than entertainment, even though it is a wonderful tool of connecting with people. But they're censoring tweets. They're going after individuals in the UK. They arrested people about transgender, you know, um, conversations because they used the wrong pronoun. So they arrested them, or at
Yeah.
least put them into holding, whatever you prefer, hugs behind bars, whatever. And and then these people have to go before a judge, and then they have like either a form of a criminal conviction of some type, or a fine, and it's all over something that was done online, maybe directly or indirectly, unintentional, but it doesn't necessarily matter in every case. And there's a targeting of religious group members. Whether I notice it's more towards, in my opinion, for what I've seen, it's way more towards Christians than it is, let's say, Islam, right? So there's a bias going on with that as well, because I don't, as far as a feminism's thinking, you cannot embrace Islam as a feminist faith no more than you can embrace Christianity as a feminist faith. I think that's
Right.
fair, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's like in the punk scene, there's a lot of these. I forgot what they call them. It's a certain type of Islamic rock. It's a little subgenre within punk, and
Mm.
it's this bullshit where you get these, feminists that are also pro Sharia law, and it's kind of like
I don't understand that. And then
I'm
they
like, yeah, I'm a free thinker, but I'm also a part of the Nationalist Socialist Party. Like that doesn't make fucking sense for
I
shit.
had an argument with one of these girls, like, I don't know, I want to say a year ago, and I went off on her. I was like, "Do you not even understand like Sharia law exactly? I mean, here's the deal. It is a religious law system, okay?
Right.
So consider that and look at the repercussions of you showing, I don't know, your ankles. Let's just get scandalous because
Yeah.
you don't have rights, woman, because you're a
Yep.
woman, you know. I don't think I just don't think that they have thought any of this through. They're just bandwagoning on it. So these are the idiots. This is their, okay, I'm telling you right now, if women don't shut up and start reading and researching what they're following, they're the reason why we're
Mm.
going to end up all in burqas and not be able to talk at all. I'm telling you, I'm going to be pissed. If that day comes, I will be pissed.
Your mic just cut out.
Did it? Oh, I was ranting. I moved the mic. But I'm saying, if I If I went to a foreign country, I would know I need to put, obviously cover myself because I'm in another country. I'm in somebody's culture. You don't act like a jackass. You don't go in there
Right.
dancing around on tombstones and thinking it's fine. As an American, it's an embarrassment to hear when we go somewhere and show our ass. It's like, listen, you're in somebody's, you know what I'm saying? You are in someone's house. Act appropriately. Okay? Whether you agree or disagree, you can argue about it later, but you're walking through their house, you better watch your shit.
Yeah,
American mentality thinks that they need to just spread this quote SJW shit, and it's not helping anybody. You're censoring people based on feelings, and feelings are not, they're temporary and useless down the road because of the repercussions of the short-lived experience of a fucking emotion. And these and it's like I feel like I have to just all these kids are so medicated, you know, and living in their own little fucking world, and I don't understand why it's gotten to this degree, but I can only guess, aside from shitty parenting and the media feeding into it, of course. But these you have to consider who is the media, who owns who, right? Stig made a comment. Censorship in Scandinavia too. So the news misinformed big time of immigrants and the like in terms of crime. And then Gregory said, "I hear you, Stig." And you know what? I agree with that as well. There's definitely a lot of filtering. I remember. Okay, let's take a moment, Kiefer. Uh, Take a moment back when Germany. Remember when all the immigrants they were welcoming them in with signs at the the at
yeah,
the subways and trains, and they were like, "We love you, immigrants. Come on in." And there was this open border nonsense, and I thought, listen, I am totally in support of immigration when it's done legally and properly, and it protects not just the individuals coming in, okay, but protecting the citizens that are already there. That's very simple. Having an open border idea was not a I don't know what they were thinking with this that makes any logical sense. But when all this stuff started happening within Germany and Italy, France, my God, France, they would kind of smooth it over or say it wasn't an issue, right? So the media would tell people, oh, it was just some rowdy youth, that did this mass stabbing in a park for no particular reason whatsoever, you know?
yeah,
And if you turn on the German news, it was the same type of talk, and they were always avoidant of identifying the individual, and there was usually never any photos, you know, in the actual segments and in the newspaper articles from their, whatever I've been able to see translated. It's always very vague. But if you look at the areas that these occurrences are happening in, they are no go areas. Unfortunately, now they're no go areas. Back then, they weren't. They were just, regular villages and stuff. And I heard about Ireland also having that same thing happen, where they're going to be bringing in immigrants, the same type of thing. And not everyone is happy about it, because they see what has happened in other countries. Um, Stig said a comment about Sharia law is as far from women's rights as humanly possible. Humanly possible.
yeah.
And women can show their ass in my house all day. I have 3 hotties banging on my door every day. Maybe I should open the door and let them come out. Oh my God. Oh, that's so nice. Do you give them a hot pocket at least once a day? That's all I say is you give them hot pockets and maybe some juice like Capri Suns. Yeah. So that way they don't want to escape. Oh my God. That was so dark. But I don't know. You know about all that immigration stuff though. I mean, that's another
Yeah.
thing that's been kind of, smoothed over. I know Italy got fed up with everything, and now they're, of course, electing new individuals into office that are much more, quote, conservative or right leaning, I guess. It's weird because, I was listening to Tim Pool in the past, and I keep up on the news because he's not my main source, thank God. But, I definitely, because he's a middle of the road progressive now, I guess. I mean, with the new, he went in video, though, and in the video he was discussing how extreme the left and extreme the right isn't anymore, and how that middle ground where like used to be a moderate is completely off the chain, right? So what we would consider right wing is now like normal centrist, and people who used to be like, let's say, a Democrat, leftists like a year ago is now considered in the middle. You know what I mean? Like it's
Right.
significantly changed and been manipulated. And I'm looking at it. And the left is way off the rails. Like according to the charts, that he shared and the research that's been pulled and polls and things they've been taking. I think this poll was done based on, was it last year's or was it 2017? Yeah, it might have been 2017 going into 2018 numbers. But that's another indicator of why this censorship, I think, is kicking up. And it's so easy to accept. And I was on a pod yesterday. I don't know. I forgot which one. I kind of popped in on a couple and then popped out. Some I wrote all the way through. But um, there was a comment about, everyone thinks that, do you think that this SJW crap is going to go away? What do you think?
If there is a God, it will. But I mean, I think it's going to take a lot more time. I think I'd say maybe 10 years. Given another 10 years,
Hmm.
I wouldn't say it's completely gone, but I think it'll just balance itself right back out to the other end of the spectrum, which is like some sort of reactionary, like over edginess
Kind
to
of
some degree.
kind of like how we got to where we're at now as a result of like the post 9/11.
Right. Like everything just started slipping back down to, oh no, we can't talk about this and that because that's, that person's literally Hitler,
Right. Oh
you know.
God, if I hear that one more time, this Hitler crap, like it's like, first off, they have dumbed down the evils that the Nazis have actually done by labeling everybody who disagrees with them
Yeah.
a Nazi. I mean, I can't even put into words how disgusting that is and degrading and offensive. Like, I don't, I just don't understand. You know, we have very distant family that died in the Holocaust, and I look at that and I go, these are people I never got to meet. That I was related to at one point.
Yeah.
I would say the majority of them are gone that were there, and the fact that these people have dumbed down what the Nazis are to this simple, you don't agree with me or you think a certain way, you must be a Nazi. You have no concept of how deep that really goes.
Yeah.
You're seeing more of an imagery and a buzzword and a cute little cliff note to something very horrific and tragic that happened. I mean, with any genocide, we have had plenty to go around. Thanks, UN, you're useless as hell. Um, but to dumb down language to such a degree that you've taken away the importance of what that meant, and to turn it into something that you can use as a buzzword just to sound cool or like something. You don't know shit, you know. So this,
Yeah.
everyone's a Nazi, everyone's a white supremacist. Well, when you push, like you were saying, when you push extreme left, you inevitably are pushing an extreme right. You're going to get that reaction, and that's why you're starting to see this really. You do have an alt right that exists, but it is not all the people that they have named. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
there are people you don't agree with, and some of them are just pompous asses, or they're egomaniacs, and that's fine too. But they're sure as hell not an alt right. Alt right, if it is what you claim it to be, is like this evil white supremacist, toxic male,
Yeah.
whatever you want to call it. But that paints a very weird picture. So where there's a push, there's a shove, right? So I think you're right. I mean, post 9/11, there was that extreme, you know, going after every single person, that was wearing a turban type of hate that came out of 9/11, and that was absolutely insane. I have never seen so much stuff happen. I mean, I remember it very clearly, but it didn't make any sense as to how the media handled it. It was a lot of propaganda that was spewed out. There was a lot of hate. We went to Iraq. Like, I don't, for what?
Yeah.
It had nothing to do with bin Laden. Nothing. And yet we have a short term memory as to why we went, right? So
Yeah.
here we are looking back on it, and they're almost like It's weird. The left has embraced Bush now, as if he's like your favorite uncle or some shit. I don't understand. It's like it's this short-term memory, and not, at least with Vietnam, like they really definitely there was decades of us having to get past that. It wasn't just the body count, but it was the politics that took us there. You know, and Building 5, yeah. Gregory's like, Building 5, yeah. Yeah, exactly. That was a planned demolition on that one. But, taking a step back from that, because I could go down that tunnel. But it's definitely one of those things where now that you have this push and shove, so we had the extreme right wing crazy shit, which was terrible, and it was feeding into a lot of fear, and that's how you get people to war, is fear. I mean, that's what Vietnam started was the Gulf of Tonkin,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah, people are always like, talking about how they're afraid of a draft or whatever. I'm like, we're not going to need one. We're going to have people lining up at their doors when we got,
mhm,
like, Madison Square Garden got bombed by, a quote terrorist group.
mhm.
Something's going to happen and they'll line up out the door and it's going to be a big
Well,
old
if it's like
hoo-ha.
every other war we've had, they just have to position it right. Have the narrative
Yep.
correct and misinform. Gulf of Tonkin didn't even happen, and we ended up in Vietnam, and then we had a 9/11 that actually happened. Okay, uh,
Yep.
and there was thousands of people killed, and it was absolute fear. I remember for like 2 or 3 days. It was a terrible feeling. You didn't feel safe anywhere in your own country because you didn't know what exactly they weren't. Obviously, their government sucked at communicating, despite all the stuff that happened. But the fear was very real, and that was such a motivator for what the Patriot Act to get pushed through, the ND, oh God, National Defense Authorization Act that got pulled through. I mean, these pieces of legislation should never have been pushed through officially. It should never have happened. But because of fear, it was a way of controlling the masses. And it
Right.
worked perfectly. So here we are, fast forward, we go through Iraq, that's bullshit. Bin Laden's killed, quote unquote killed. And then we move forward. And we act like, okay, it's all over now. No, it's not. Mm-mm. No, it's not over.
Yeah.
So then under Obama, things just kind of got more and more, what do you call it, identity politics orientated. And that's pretty dangerous when you start pumping that in there. And now we're worried about what people feel, and we're worried about how we appropriate others, and how can we divide the people even more than we need to. So why
Yep.
did Trump get elected? I didn't vote for him, okay, but I didn't vote for Hillary either. They can both kiss my ass. But he got in because people were sick of being told that they were sexist and they were all these things. They didn't believe that the government related to their everyday needs. The working man, the blue collar people, things were affecting their day-to-day lives, their bread and butter, so they'd work all these hours and they were just not making the money. And then they had that medical, what do you call it, Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, push through, and that just put a more bigger dent into it. So
Yep.
that's why Trump got it put in. I don't. I oh my! All I'm gonna say is he's the biggest troll ever, and it works. It works every time, and I just like whatever. At this point, we're all in the clown car. You know what I mean? Everybody's driving.
Yeah. It's a whole barrel of fucked.
Gregory says he was a corporal in the Royal Dutch Army. Believe me, only politicians love war. That is true.
If that ain't the truth. A lot when people, I mean, the reason why I love the troops so much is because, soldiers don't start the wars,
Mhm.
the kings and queens do. So I mean, it's
Mhm.
I never blame them. I mean, just like with police officers, I don't like them, but I'm not gonna just walk up to one and start being a dick because at the end of the day, that's another human being. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
he's just doing his thing. He has, God willing, the right intentions to what
Right.
he's doing. He wants to help out the community.
Mhm.
That's great.
Well, we have
I
military
just,
family
yeah,
members, and they didn't. Um, my grandmother, she was a first lieutenant in the U.S. Army during World War II. She was like a head RN, and she was over on Tinian, over in Japan. One part of the Tinian Islands that Japan had control over. They got rid of Japan. She was in there like right after, like I think within a few months, less than 6 months later, and that was the island that the atom bomb was brought over to and released. So they actually flew out of that old air base to deliver the atom bombs. And at the time, she didn't understand what was going on, but she was given a heads up that something was going down and also they had them out on the beaches digging foxholes because said she didn't understand why. But she was like, "Is this our graves? Like, what's going on?" And then when she found out about the atom bombs the next morning, very early morning, um, she wasn't she said that her initial reaction was absolute pride and grateful that this would end the war, and soon enough there was the ending of the war. But after everything was said and done, we did talk about the kids. Like, she wrote many letters home to her family when she was abroad. She told everyone she was in Hawaii, but she was actually on Tinian off of her records. Yeah, that's right, the Enola Gay. And
I
she
think the Enola Gay only dropped one of them
yeah, yeah.
because I think the Enola Gay dropped the one that was on Hiroshima,
Mhm.
not Nagasaki.
Mhm. But yeah, but she actually saw them come in with the flatbeds. It was really late at night when they were moving all this stuff, and it was a lot of chaos when they were, because it was heavy escort to move the bombs from one place, that they were being stored out to the actual to fill, to get the planes loaded up, I guess. But she saw the flatbeds the night before when she had been warned about all this after they'd been digging foxholes all day, or at least most of the afternoon. She saw them come with the security teams and all the jeeps and all of the, just security around the flatbeds, bringing them into the base, and she didn't know what the hell they were, but she was worried. But after everything was said and done with the war, she wrote a lot of letters home, and in the letters, she talked about seeing the kids from the internment camps here in the United States, like when she was in Seattle and in different parts of California, seeing kids working, like taking garbage and stuff that were very young, but they were all Japanese. And she felt terrible seeing these young children not understanding what was going on and not understanding why they were being put in these camps. And she was well aware of the internment camps, and she's at that time, this is before the war ended. Um, she just felt terrible. It was like she didn't understand. She understood, but she didn't. And it was kind of like a blinding hate that you have for your enemy, not realizing that you're hurting yourself too in many ways. It's not a race that's hurting you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But it's a sense of nationalism, that comes with war. So after that, she heard more about the atom bomb. She didn't actually watch footage until many years later, and she said that she had no idea that that was what happened to these people, and she said they were civilians,
Yeah.
and that's what bothered her. Like, that's what stuck with her, was that these were children and families. These weren't, they were supposedly targeting certain locations, but in all actuality, they were going for the major structures and cities.
Yeah, when people try to justify the Hiroshima and Nagasaki by saying, "Oh, they were military cities," bullshit. Those were
Hmm.
civilian cities. They just happened to have, certain
F-
military families there.
and
You know,
facilities, yeah, but it
yeah,
was
they
just,
weren't
they were
just
looking
military
for the
towns.
correct. They were looking for collateral impact. To get that collateral number, and they got it. And I think
Yeah,
for
just
her
straight
that changed.
shock and awe.
Yes, and I think that changed her opinions a lot about war after that. Even though she was proud of her service, my grandfather also served, but she was abroad longer, and she saw a lot of shit, and she didn't talk about a lot of it until, like, in her mind, man, she had been in Hawaii that whole time. At least the way she would speak about it, because of the ND, non-disclosure, and loose lips sink ships. So she would always kind of like say, "Oh yeah, I was in Hawaii," and all her money that she had, because I have a dollar bill from her, put away, and it has Hawaii stamped on it that she used during World War II. But she was stationed there on Tinian, and I was like, it was in her records. I was like, Graham, what's up with this? And she's like, oh yeah, we were over in some islands there near Japan. I'm like, what? But she had been so, that's just the military getting into the head a little bit about protecting your country's interests and so on.
Right.
And you don't want to be a commie. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that thank you for your service, Greg. But either way, you all serve our countries, and I'm never going to talk mad shit about soldiers, in that
Yeah.
way. I mean, the serving the country is an important role that it helps better the country, and I would like to think that it also is a checks and balances if need be. Take that as you will of what that means. Meaning, if things go awry with your government and things don't work out, well, things happen. Things happen. But I'm not encouraging anything. I'm just saying. But um, I'm not that kind of person. I would never allude to that. But I think it's interesting because we do take our sense of nationalism to weird levels, and then we had all that extreme nationalism post 9/11 forever, and now here we are. Now we have this. You have to watch what you say, and
Right.
feminists. As a feminist, you should embrace Islam because it's so friendly to women. Yeah, right. Like I said, no religion that I know of so far, aside from a few cults, are going to say to you very honestly, "Oh, um, religion in general has always kind of been more based on those traditional roles where women are the submissives and well slaves, in a sense, and to be beaten and so on and so forth. Um, whereas if you just have a faith, you can have faith in anything, and it's your gold. You know what I mean? But
Right.
I think this whole crap of not understanding the basis of reality, of not understanding like the context of like what censorship does, trying to erase history, trying to rewrite history. And I know that history has already been flawed and filtered because the victors write the textbooks. The winners
Yeah.
write the end stories. The losers don't get to do that very often. Actually never. So the ones that you remember are the winners because they're the ones gloating the loudest, right?
Hmm.
So that's flawed by itself, but to have oppositional opinions, I know when I was in school, I can't remember. When you were in school, what did they teach you in your textbooks?
Um, regarding like
War.
just war, everything was like the United States did everything by themselves, you know.
Mhm.
They like regarding like the Second World War, it was like they hardly touched on the war in the Pacific like ever.
Mhm.
Um, it was mainly about the war in Europe because, Nazis are bad. The Japanese Empire never did anything ever.
That
And
was a
that's
weird
when the
part, huh? They don't
in the
really
United,
talk about the Japanese very much.
yeah, and like the Japanese were just as evil as the fucking Nazis were. So I mean, I don't know why we're ignoring it.
Like,
Maybe because it wasn't as, it wasn't, you know, a respectful kind of like uh gentleman's warfare as it was,
right.
in the European campaign where it was like, the Nazis were fucking savages, but they still understood like, hey, there's certain things you don't do, you know,
Mhm.
at least to troops. They treated, enemy troops better than they treated, their own people and,
Well,
obviously
yeah, and
Jews.
that's still pretty bad. Like that's the thing that
Yeah.
sucks. I mean, we're still talking like low standards, but they still followed these imaginary protocols to some extent.
Yeah, whereas the Japanese had to put up with Marines. And at the time, I mean, the United States Marine Corps and the
Oh, I think your mic went out. Really quick,
armed
Gregory said,
forces were.
really quick. You got cut off here halfway through there, but Gregory said that he studied three languages: chemistry, geography, math. Three languages. Three languages? That's interesting. What languages did they teach? I am not even sure. Oh, and biology and sports. Okay. What languages did they teach there? I don't even. I know that language is much more reinforced in other countries. The United States sucks. Sucks.
Yeah. You go through 4 years of Spanish and you don't learn a damn thing.
Right. You don't learn conversational Spanish. You don't learn conversational French or German. It's usually crap. Bottom level crap.
Yeah.
Mhm. Sorry, I didn't mean to
But
cut you off there. I just
I
your
don't know,
your
my
your mic kind of popped out, I think.
yeah, I had a weird alarm set for some reason. I think it was from this morning. Um, but yeah, like I was saying, I think the war in the Pacific was a lot dirtier than the war in Europe as far as straight warfare.
Mhm.
Um, and on top of that, you also had the Japanese American internment camps. You know what I mean? You would have to talk about that if you were about to talk about the war in the Pacific, and you want to shy away from all of that. Um, it's I don't know, it's really touch and go. They never ever bring up the Korean War, which is weird because that was probably the closest we've come to winning a war since the Second World War. So like, why wouldn't they talk about that?
Mhm.
Probably because they got chased out of North Korea by a bunch of Chinamen with, you know, less than standard, you know, weaponry. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, ever since we've just been getting embarrassed by these, you know, jokes of militaries because the United States gets overzealous and they try to bite off more than they can chew.
Gregory said that the first thing you learn in other languages are curse words. Every time,
Yeah,
Gregory. Absolutely.
I know more curse words in foreign languages than I know like any other, I don't know, useful words.
Gregory says that winter in Korea is hell.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, especially up there, like in the northern parts, it's I mean, right where they got hung up along with in the Chosin Reservoir. That
Mhm.
was just, I mean, it might as well have been like, I wouldn't say Russia, but you know, as close as you could get to it in Asia. Like it was brutal. What happened to the German war machine in, you know, the Soviet Republic when you had the winter roll in was basically what happened to the United States.
Mhm.
They were just going. They flew through South Korea. Where they were cutting through North Korea, and then they stalled out because of the winter.
Gregory says
They
that
had
the
trouble getting supplies.
Dutch. Gregory says the Dutch were there.
Yeah, it was just a big old shit show. Honestly, I blame MacArthur like 100% for that.
Well, not very well strategically planned whatsoever.
Yeah, he was very egotistical. You know, and keep in mind that's the same guy that decided to abandon the Americans and the Philippine Americans and Bataan.
Mhm. Mhm. And Patton's like, "Come over here, let me give you a hug."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's when you look at history books, I the Japanese involvement in World War II was downplayed a lot, even though their
Yeah.
name is mentioned and they kind of elaborate maybe a sentence or two. Their main primary. My God, I can't talk today. My primary focus they had though um, was on Germany, and obvious
Right.
reasons for so. But that is such a reflection though. If you go back a little bit to World War I, you know, Germany got a raw deal out of that. Um,
Oh yeah.
oh my God, and and people are like, well, how did Hitler come into power and all this crap? I'm like, World War I.
Yeah.
It all came from that. It all stemmed from that event because after they, had all types of shit come down on them, they went through this very significant. I'm summarizing to get through it, but they went through a very significant depression in Germany, and it was
Yeah.
devastating. And
That's what catapulted World War II.
absolutely, I mean, well,
Catapulted Hitler's
there
rise.
you go. Yeah, because I mean, charismatic 40 something year old guy, you know,
You know,
not well
war
educated.
hero.
Exactly, exactly. And they were like, he's one of us.
Yeah.
And they brought him in, and he's all about everybody, having a fair deal, and they deserve to treat their people. And the people did recover very well, but they paid a horrible price for this ass. He just went off the rails, you know. Absolutely. I think you just muted yourself again. There you go.
Uh,
Attaboy.
yeah. Yeah, people at that time, from my understanding, were desperate to just get out of the rut that they were in because money was better suited to play with as a toy as monopoly money than it was to use as actual currency. Like there's so many pictures of children just burning it or playing with it, like Legos. Like it was their currency was a joke, you
Hmm.
know. Like Mexican currency is worth more than that crap. So that was just one of many reasons that, and also they, they didn't like foreigners very much, which is oddly, which
Who
is pretty
knew?
ironic because Hitler himself was a foreigner, but he wasn't a Jew, so it wasn't, they didn't care.
Right.
People like to act as if, in Germany or in Europe they haven't been anti-Semitic until Hitler showed up. Like that's a bunch of horse shit.
No, that's
Like
not
it's been
true.
that way for a long time,
Absolutely. Multiple countries, it's been an issue.
even in the United States,
Oh, absolutely.
especially during that war.
Oh my God, yeah, it was bad. It's been that way for a long time. So eh, I think that's the biggest thing that's a concern to me. I think is the censoring and the changing of history, and what we know about different wars is important to how we got to where we're at. It does affect. There's a social, what do you call it? Social consciousness that is uh, It's brought together generationally. So, for example, like I've talked about this quite a few times with you before, but example, when you have, let's say, people from the Civil War back here in the United States, 1800s, we have the Civil War. It's one of the worst, since the Revolutionary War. This is the bloodiest war we've ever had. Revolutionary War was nothing in comparison to the Civil War as far as bloodshed and just the devastation it did to the land and to the people and to the infrastructure. And there was all of this, we had people that lost limbs. They
Right.
had tremendous impacts on PTSD and things like that. But when down the pipeline, you were approaching World War One. So we have people that are, either well into their old age. Okay, this is at the turn of the century. They're passing away, or they have their own families, and they're quite a bit older. There were still a lot of Civil War veterans alive during World War One when that started. Well, we entered the war late, always late to every
Yeah.
war. And
Yeah.
if I may evoke a little chicken run, um, but we showed up late. We were only there like what, maybe 18 months, if that, not even that. And there were people that were coming home with, they didn't want our country. There was a lot of generations that were still alive saying, no, you don't want to go to war. We don't want anything to do with that. And they did. They fought going to war. People didn't want to lose their sons and daughters like they had just went through the Civil War, or that memory was still there because you still had generations living from that wartime. So when we did enter World War One, there were people coming home without legs and arms, and it was terrible. Nobody wanted to go to
Yeah.
war. So they fought. There was a lot of backlash for that. So then you had generations, not just from the Civil War, but also for World War One, that were carrying those memories of, people coming home with shell shock, and the devastation and effects on Europe and all of the countries that were involved. It was one of the bloodiest wars, in my opinion, uh,
Yeah.
that's ever happened. I mean, World War II was bad, but World War One, it was the introduction of so much technology and development. I mean, that's the beginning. That was the birth of plastic surgery and learning prosthetics for a reason.
Right.
And also, machine guns and things like that were more well developed during that war. Um, but anyway, so you fast forward to World War II. They don't want to go to war once again. This is World War II is an extension of World War One. You have people that have, you've lost a good portion of your Civil War veterans due to age and whatever, but you still have veterans and families and people with a good memory, that social connection. And I guess, in a sense, the storytellers that are like, no, 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 I don't want our children going to war and coming home in a body, not coming home at all. I don't want to lose our
Right.
children. And World War II happens, what did it take for the United States to get heavily involved? And actually, they were having issues drafting. They were having to consider a draft. I mean, they were trying to get people to join the military. Nobody wanted to because of that social consciousness from what the veterans and families who remembered all these
Right.
other wars. What happened to get them there? Oh, Pearl Harbor, and all of a sudden they didn't
Yeah.
have enough. It didn't have enough space and enough uniforms to get these guys out there that quick. I mean, they were working on it, and everybody was joining. Everybody was joining after Pearl Harbor, and then they had the manpower and the money, and they had excuses of how to gain that money through war bonds, and everybody was much more willing to pay for a war at that point because of what happened at Pearl Harbor, which was absolutely a huge mistake on part of leadership. And that, in my opinion, they knew that there was a threat there. I mean, that's my opinion. I, personally say that.
Right.
Oh, Stig says Norway. Um, yes, the media is infotainment. Absolutely, Gregory.
Yeah.
Stig says Norway made sure the Nazis didn't get nuclear weapons. We did our part, big part. And then Gregory says, yes, yes, Stig. Heavy water.
Yep. Yep. Um, the whole Hydra bomb and all that nonsense. I mean, I think one of the unsung heroes of World War II was Finland. It was kind of like a little side note, but the continuation war with Finland and the Soviet Union, gorgeous. It That was one of the few countries that was able to stand up to the Soviet Union. I mean, speaking of communists, and actually be successful at it
Mm-hmm.
because no other country in the world could resist them. I mean, because if you were within reach, they were getting your ass. Like there was really no fighting.
Yeah, Gregory said that Finland kicked their ass.
And there's one guy in particular named Simo. I can't pronounce his. I don't want to try to pronounce his last name
Mm-hmm.
because I will just mess it up. I probably even messed up Simo, but he was that they called him the White Death because he was the guy out there. He was a competition shooter. He was like a farmer dude. Like he just shot for fun, and he had some old bolt action rifle. It was like a remodeled version of a Soviet rifle, and he would sit out there in the snow and he would like put snow in his mouth so the vapors didn't come up, from his breath. And he didn't have a scope, but had over 500 plus confirmed kills
Good God.
just on Soviet troops. Yeah, he was an animal. I think I forgot what the bounty went up to on him. Like they placed a premium on his head. Like if they captured him or killed him. If they just killed him, it was whoever that was that killed him was getting a huge payday. But they never did.
Mm. I think what's interesting is all these smaller stories that come out of wars, especially in just as let's see here, Stig's. Let's see here, the Sipper. I think Gregory. I don't know what that's he says the Sipper. I think it's spelling on that. But Stig says Sweden did nothing. Nada. Look how soy based that country is now. SJW nation.
Unfortunately.
I know. It's so sad. The potential was high at some point, you know, and now it's just kind of gotten softer and more complicated because of feelings, and everyone wants to feel good.
Yeah, I mean it's weird because of the amount
Oh,
of like
Gregory says he was a wolf hunter and trained by his grandpa.
there you go.
There you go. Okay. Sniper. That's what he meant. Sniper.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
I had a feeling,
Yep.
but I didn't want to say for sure and be like, I'm not sure.
And see, because I mean, if he was a sniper, that used a scope, I would be a little more inclined to believe that he got 100 confirmed kills, but he had over 500 and didn't use a scope. So I mean, that guy was just pure animal. He was made for war.
Hmm. You get some really fantastic stories out of wars, especially like World War One. There's some great ones, and then of course two. It's interesting because they don't always come out right away. It takes what decades sometimes.
Yeah.
And also diaries are found or some crazy shit. But going back to taking a step back. So in order for us, to go to war now, it's like you have to convince the American people through emotional manipulation to go to war. Just like with Iraq, there's no reason we should have gone. There was weapons of mass bullshit. I mean, there was nothing there. And they can say, well, we know for a fact we saw them. I'm like, does it matter? Where are they now? You know,
Yeah.
Bin Laden was never there. They knew he was in Pakistan the whole time. They've known that from the beginning. you know. So it was more or less a money grab and a bunch of old bullshit from the Gulf War. And in the end, it spit in the eye. And they also had pre warning that 9/11 was going to happen. That was well known, you know.
Yeah.
So uh, the Saudi Arabia was involved. They denied that for years, and all of a sudden, hey, it came out. Now you have families suing Saudi Arabia. I mean, it's the media's biggest joke was pretending and promoting propaganda, and they get offended now because they're called fake news. Bitches, you've been fake news for a long fucking time. So how about y'all sit down in the corner and know your place, you know? And the media that we have here in the United States has there's none of them that I trust. Like I end up going online, I listen to podcasts in the UK, I listen to podcasts in Australia and a few in Ireland. Um and I listen to a few in Canada and some down in the South America that speak English, thank God, because I'm not that good at Spanish. But I have to.
Yeah.
That's how I stay in touch with what's going on in those countries that are independent, really run by independent people. Otherwise, we don't have a full picture. Even if some of the information ends up being incorrect in the future, meaning something else comes out and disproves it in the context of more information is available. Fine, but at least I have a general idea of what the hell they're being told where they're living. You know. Gregory asks, "Have you seen Enemy at the Gates?"
Oh, of course I have. Yeah. That I forgot what was his name because he was the hero of Stalingrad. He also was some world-class sniper. That movie has inspired a lot of video games and other smaller movies. I mean, like specifically, the mission where he is like basically the beginning of the movie where he's, there in Stalingrad trying to take out the like a little German group, and there's like a couple of high-ranking officers and like a general or something because he's taking a shower in the middle of the ruins of Stalingrad for some reason, and he ends up, timing the shots with the bombers flying overhead, and it works out perfectly. I'm like, yeah, okay, but I mean, it's a great movie. It's a long movie.
How long is it?
I think it's around 2.5 hours, maybe.
Oh, it's not that long. I
But yeah,
mean,
it's
it's not
Ed
Shin.
Helms
It's
is in
not.
it.
It's not fucking Schindler's List. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
oh my god,
Schindler's List was great.
great movie, but oh my god, I'm glad I didn't go to the theater. My ADD would have kicked in. I would have been done. I would have been done. I wouldn't have lasted. I would have been like, I need to. It's like when I saw Lord of the Rings, same thing. But so that movie was 2.5 hours with Enemy at the Gate. Who was in that? Was that the one with Owen Wilson in it, or is that something else?
No, no, it's Jude Law. Ed Helms plays the bad guy, and there's actually quite a few recognizable guys. Ron Perlman is in it in
Okay.
his weird Russian accent because he's, New Yorkers can,
Mhm.
speak Russian.
Mhm.
But yeah, Ed Helms plays a German officer he's kind of like supposed to be a counter sniper to this Russian hero, and he's supposed to like try to counter him.
That's
There's
crazy.
actually in one of the scenes where he's like in a giant factory, like abandoned factory, and there's a sniper like pinning him down. He has to like army crawl throughout the warehouse. That's been also redone on I think Medal of Honor Airborne, an old game. Like it's inspired a lot because I mean there's a lot to take from that movie since it was so long and they put a lot of money and time into it.
Yeah. Gregory just brought up that the first oh, excuse me, there was a female Russian sniper in World War II. The one that was like fierce.
Yeah,
I can't pronounce her
there was
name. I
a
have her photo
whole
up, but her name is Oh man, I don't even want to slaughter that poor woman's name, but yes, they had some.
Yeah, they had a whole, I want to say it was a brigade or a platoon full of them, Russian female snipers, but there was one in particular that had like a
Mhm.
wild amount of kills. Like
Yeah,
she was very efficient at her job.
yeah. I have her photo up right now, but yeah, her. Let me flip over. But Lady Death, um, Lumania. I don't want to screw up that woman's name, but she was considered the deadliest woman. Lady Death was her nickname.
Yeah,
She volunteered for frontline service at the age of 25, joined the combat army after only a brief sniper training. She took part in the battles for Odessa and Sevastopol in Ukraine. During these battles, she met a fellow sniper with whom she decided to tie the knot. But soon after applying for permission to marry, her fiance was seriously wounded and he died in the hospital. Um, so she's like, I'm gonna take it out on the enemy. In less than
yeah.
1 year, she eliminated 300 enemy soldiers and officers. It is said that some of Germany's top snipers were sent to take her out, 36 of whom she neutralized. One of her adversaries, according to the media reports, was a German sniper with over 400 kills. Having recovered from injury, she traveled to the United States and Canada as part of a Soviet youth delegation. She received a U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt. She was received by U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt and his wife, Eleanor, took her on a trip around the country. Um, but at meetings of the United States, she urged the Allies to expedite the opening of a second front in Europe. Speaking in Chicago, she stated, "Gentlemen, I am 25 years old. I have already annihilated 309 fascist invaders. Do you not think, gentlemen, that you have been hiding behind my back for too long?" In the United States, she was presented with a Colt pistol, and in Canada with a Winchester rifle. She also has a song named after her. She was awarded in 1943 the title Hero of the Soviet Union, but she did not return to the front and spent her time training snipers. So,
So there was a quote from, I think it was a Russian general, I want to say.
mhm.
Yeah, the Soviet general. They uh they asked him. There was like some sort of interview or something, and I think it was after the war. And they asked him, how does it feel to, take another human life? And he responds, he's like, I don't know. I've only killed fascists. Like, well, good on you, bud.
He's like, this is what I've done. Oh, man. There's some great stories that have come out of the wars, and at the same time, it always goes back to, look at how society used to be and then how sheltered we are now. You know? Look at how
Yeah,
rough and tough things used to be. I'm not saying all it was perfect and everything. Obviously there's modernization that's needed and change is absolutely necessary. But things that we shouldn't, I don't know, they were still very filtered and censored back then, and you had all the communists, freak out, with the blacklisting and crap that happened in this country and in others. But in the end, the price that was paid was the loss against people. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Like, there was a lot of people that were lost in the shuffle, and we were dealing with actual race issues of segregation and people
yeah,
wanting to be unified and have these opportunities for success, right? And now we have idiots calling to be segregated again because they're offended by the color of someone's skin. And we've regressed. And we've created witch hunts and attacked each other for how we look and what sexuality somebody has. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's disgusting and it's ridiculous and it's unnecessary. Life is a little too damn
yeah,
short for all this, you know. But because so many people have been sheltered, they feel a need for censorship in their lives to protect them from the reality of the world. And unfortunately, the world will come knocking, whether we like it or not, whether that's because our government left a door open by accident or because you decided to expand your horizons by getting the hell out of this country for a while to see the world and actually know the people and experience the places, see the culture, you know, Americans are nothing but mutts. In the end, no one is 100% anything.
Right.
We're all screwed up. you know, we're mutts. Our backgrounds are, Irish, and, our family, it's Native American and uh, Irish on one side, and, Norwegian on the other. And even pieces of a lot of Czechoslovakia and Hungary, if you will. Um, so it's when you understand where you've come from, how you've gotten to where you're at as an American, it has very little to do with the bubble and more about who brought you here, what shoulders did you stand, whose shoulders did you stand on to get where you're at right now, to be a better person, who in your
Right.
family, what grandparents did you have, and knowing your history, and not saying, well, I'm 100% this. No one in America, unless they moved here from a country directly, are 100% something. Very few
Right.
people are. And even the ones who come over here probably have mixed genes too. We're all mixed mutts running around, and that's okay. But we get into this identity politics and being offended, and everyone's offensive, and I can't believe you would say that. How insensitive! I don't give a damn, because if we don't, like, if I speak the truth, then I don't need to apologize. Maybe on how I say it, but but not for speaking the truth. I don't need to apologize to someone if I'm telling them the truth. If they get offended by the truth, then they can go fuck
Right.
themselves. you know. Um. Yeah. But yeah, like in the broader spectrum of things, as we go forward, I think I don't know. Do I think the SJW thing is going to go away? I doubt it. I think the bigger voices will go away, but I believe the agenda is there of pushing a filter into our media. It's going to happen, and they're going to do it under the premises of accommodating other countries. Because if you look at China's requirements, even though like they're against homosexuality and all these things, given time, little things will be avoided or slip through. But I believe that we're going to, no matter what, censorship is 100% on the plate. Bob Iger, who runs Disney, is all for it. And that's pretty scary considering how many companies and film, production, TV, what do you call it, cable stations, whatever, that they own. There's a danger there to how much influence that he could possibly have, and he will. He will absolutely have that kind of impact. Does that make sense?
Right.
And so, I mean, if we don't address censorship as it's happening and we pretend that it's not going to be a problem, and then we also pretend that it's just a social group that's bitching loudly, that social group is a problem and they're stupidly obnoxious, but you should be looking towards the people with the money. Not the peasants, but the actual, you're in the Colosseum. Who's running the Colosseum?
Right.
It's not the slave handlers, okay? It's the people above them. So we need to look at who is running the show, what connections are they having. Okay? If you're seeing censorship in film and in your video games, who are they catering to? You know, they're just, the what do you call it? The blue collar worker in their mind. They're
Yeah.
still on a peasant level to these emperors and kings and queens self proclaimed who think they're going to run all this stuff. And they'll do it successfully because people are so worried about, well, it'll be fine, and maybe it
Yeah.
will. Maybe it'll look fine on the out front, but over time, how you change the populations and the way they think is with forms of propaganda. And when you censor things and try to rewrite history, I believe that feeds into a greater problem because you're changing a social narrative to accommodate for an agenda that's well beyond any positivity to help the population. It is not
Yeah.
about the better of the people. It's about the better of the corporation or the power structure or the government, whatever you want to call it. It's never. It's not. She's. Yeah,
Oh,
she's
jeez.
she's very scary. Your dog is frightening. Um, China is buying a lot of Africa. That's true, Gregory. And you know what's interesting is they were supplying, in the Sudan when they had all of the genocide stuff going on there in the Sudan, that the guns that were being brought in and sold to, or given to some of these groups that were causing these genocides were the Chinese, because they were there for oil, I think, and they were basically like buying off these gangs and stuff to kind of like move around groups of people, aka eliminate a problem for them. They were funding the genocide, basically. The Chinese were.
Right.
No, that was. Oh, Gregory's like, that's a wild cat.
Yeah.
Or weird cat. Yeah, that's Willie's cat. Willie's dog, who's a little Chihuahua, who honestly is like the smallest Chihuahua. I don't know, man. She's bitchy. She's such a bitch. That dog
Yeah.
is a bitch. And she's like super protective over him. So if somebody even comes into the room sometimes, she barks like that. She's full of shit. So.
Yeah, she weighs like 2 pounds. I would never be afraid of her.
Then he has a Rottweiler lab mix, and she's a big dog. So you have two extremely big dog, like differences in size. So big Rottweiler and this very small Chihuahua, and they get together, and she acts like the little one is older, so she thinks she's alpha. She's such a
Yeah.
dumbass. But anyway, so did you have anything else you wanted to add, sir?
No, I think just the biggest thing I wanted to talk about was the how China was affecting our media here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, USA did give weapons to the Taliban, and they trained them too, didn't they? In Al Qaeda.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bin Laden was trained by the CIA. Well, that's a bad throwback, isn't it? CIA's like, damn, we forgot to throw away those videos. Oh my god.
Right.
It was so sad. Oh my god, it was so funny. I was like, oh my god, so much facepalm. But anyway, I'm glad that we got to talk about the censorship. I know we got off topic talking about wars and stuff, but it's hard not
Yeah.
to. I don't really care either. I'm like, to me, everything is connected in some way or another. It's just how
Yeah.
you look at it. So, yeah, good times, great oldies. Anyway, thanks for hanging out tonight, Gregory. Really appreciate it.
And Gregory is the one in the Netherlands.
Amsterdam.
Nice.
Thanks, Greg. He says you two are so cool.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna try to
And
do this like at least once a week. It would be kind of cool too, on different stuff. World War II talk could
it's,
take forever. Like you could talk about World War everything,
yeah.
but in general, there's a lot of stuff out there still topics wise. It'd be interesting to go over the school shooting topic.
Yeah. And the rise of mass shootings in the U.S.
Dude, yeah, that would be a good topic to talk about. Because I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it because it's negative and they don't want to feed into anything. And I'm like, it's already fed. Like, it's a done deal. Like, whatever's going to
Yeah.
happen is already happened at this point. Meaning, it's going to keep happening. So it's like become. I mean, you have shootings in other countries now, which I think is definitely odd. I mean, just the mass scale of them, like the one they just had. What was it in New Zealand, right?
Yeah.
Mm. Oh, he's like, do 5 minutes more. Push it.
He's trying to stay up till what is it? Like 3 over there now,
4?
roughly.
What time is it there, Gregory? I mean, I have no idea. I would think it'd be like 4, right? Because we've been on here 2 hours.
Yeah.
But God, why are you up so late? Because that's late. I mean, I stay up late too, but I messed up anyway. He says it is 3:14 a.m. Okay, Kiefer, you were right. You were right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why are you up so late? Just kind of a night owl?
Probably.
Probably. He says PSD. Mm.
PSD.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh, well, I'm trying to think what else. But yeah, we should do one about the school shootings, I think. I think that would
Yeah.
be I think there would be a lot of material to that, but at the same time not just focus on it like why did it happen. I don't Here's the thing, I don't want to break down a specific shooting and be like the play by play of what happened in that situation.
Right.
But I would more or less say is there stuff that's coming. Remember how they used to blame the shootings on the games all the time
Yeah.
and the films?
Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto were the scapegoats for that garbage.
I'm like, I didn't get it. I mean, I played the games. I see how, yeah, there is something to video games and how it affects the brain, but I don't believe for a damn minute if somebody plays Call of Duty, they're going to go out in their uniform and relive World War II. You know,
Right.
um, there's obviously more to it than that, and a lot of it is more of I would say a lack of parenting is a big one, and a lack of early intervention in a kid's life. And a lot of times because you don't have a parent in the home, there's not, they're both parents are in the home, but there's no one at home. So there's always somebody working. I would say that that would lead to problems over time, you know,
Right.
divorces, broken homes, things like that. Those add into the problem. Also, how mental health is addressed is a big issue. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's related to it, and social skills and all these things that people are struggling with now were never an issue. All of a sudden there is. Gregory says that
Yeah.
he only needs 5 hours of sleep. He's old. What is old, Gregory? How old are you? I'm waiting. There's a little delay. But,
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be a good I mean, would you be up for that?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
All right. Then we'll have to probably maybe do this once a week. Would that work?
Yeah.
Okay. Try not to get off on the World War II tangents, but it's just too exciting not to.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. I like you know, I was talking to Rich. He's on the UND Gamer Die channel. He's one of my former coworkers, and we've been friends for a long time. We used to run a podcast, which is on hiatus, and we talk about everything on that. Um, and we were just had this long conversation about, because he's a gamer and he loves gaming, but we have also like talking about all this random shit. But Rich and I had this conversation about just how things have changed so dramatically in such a short period of time when it comes to what we're allowed to say and what we're not allowed to say. Don't retract your message, Gregory. How old are you, fool? Don't hide. Don't hide. Um. Anyway, so he's just stunned because he has two daughters and he doesn't know what to do with himself. You know, there's been bullying problems at the schools and there's a lot of tension that started to seep in, and I've seen it. Because of the identity politics stuff, and it's
Yeah.
affected kids negatively. You know, um, the I know with I don't know. I'm gonna let that go because it's gonna go down a rabbit hole, and I'll talk forever about that. But I go. But Gregory says there is a football in my yard. God damn. Well, that escalated. Is that from a neighbor? the rate.
Sometimes kids be playing soccer, man.
You'll hear rage coming from Amsterdam. You'll hear screaming. You don't know why, but you're pretty sure it's Gregory.
Yeah.
But so we'll get together probably, maybe do it again next Saturday. And
Yeah.
yeah, but during the week I'll probably do some live streaming crap. I usually pop in and out of like live streams throughout the week. Whenever I see somebody's on and things are chill. There's a couple streams I have avoided getting on just cuz there's so many people on there and everyone's got their things going on. But it'll be fun to kind of like, I have just started doing this crap. So we'll see how it goes. Over time, things will pick up. It's not for everybody because everyone wants to stay positive and fluffy, but it's still fun. I don't know. All right. Well, thanks for listening, Gregory, and thank you for everybody that did pop in and out and continuously throughout the podcast and or podcast, whatever the hell this is, live stream. Um, thanks
Right.
very much, Gregory. And we'll do this again next Saturday. But during the week, I'll probably be in and out of some podcasts. I know that Geek in Disguise does three live streams during the week. I believe it's Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then Lee does his, and Miss does hers. Everyone kind of pops in and out of streams. And I also go to Black Angus's channel too and pop in and out of there. Um, whether I'm just hanging out in chat or I'm modding for somebody else. Whatever. Right. Well, have a good night, Gregory. Get sleep. And to everyone else, thanks so much for listening. And if you made it through here, bless you.